Yay. Okay. So Anne and Mina, I'm gonna just let you guys take it away.
Okay. Well, Mina, thank you for getting this coordinated. I truly appreciate it. I sent through the app 2 books that I had been using. One of them was the Pendulum, the Ultimate Guide. And I also sent Amazon checks of where you could get the book. And then the other one that I had is the Pendulum Workbook. The other one I had on my Kindle. That's why I can't hold it up as easily. And this one has tons of different pictures, different templates, and I'll explain those as we get going. So that's what this one's nice about, because it has so many different templates. So I was just going to go through a little bit of history about it, a little bit of explanation about pendulums, and then I was going to get into how we can play with them. Mina, did you want to say anything before we get started?
No, I'll take notes and gather up the materials that you provided through WhatsApp, and we can find a way to make it accessible. I started a SharePoint drive for the group, but I'm not sure accessibility wise. So I want to get some feedback on what's the best way to share files and documents to support the pendulum practice. And I'll take notes, and then at the end, if there's anything that I, to add, I'll throw it all out there.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. First of all, pendulum is also called dowsers, and if you ask it a question to look for an answer, that's when you're doing the dowsing. Okay. If you're using a pendulum to transform energy or from healing, then it is not dowsing, because that was one thing that was kind of, what's the difference between dowsing and using a pendulum and so forth. So that was one explanation that was given. A lot of times pendulum and dowsing is an occult thought. And when you do, you can, if you do use a dowse, a lot of times they're dowsing rods. They can be a willow wood, Ronan, a Y-shaped metal rod. I've seen them where they're like the Y-shaped rods that are used to like look for water. I know out west they use them. I've seen people using them in the south. It's what they consider, it's looking for hidden treasures is the one thing that they were calling it. The practice of water dowsing, divination, or divining, divining is also called doodlebugging. I've heard that phrase. I didn't realize that was what dowsing was. I thought that's kind of interesting. If you're searching for water, they also called it water witching, and then water dowsing too. It's gone all the way back to 6000 BC in Algeria. They did find a cave drawing of a man with a forked stick, probably looking for water. So that's kind of interesting. They have Egyptian paintings of people doing some work with the dowsing rods. Emperor Yu used it, dowsing, to locate geopath stress zones. And in the Old Testament, Aaron and Moses used it for finding water. They used a rod for finding water. Oh, D-O-W-S-E-R-S. D-O-W-S-E-R. Dowsing. Sorry. And Queen Elizabeth I, in Germany, 16th century, they used the dowsing rods to search for metal iron. And so Queen Elizabeth I used it. She saw it when they did it, so she started using it. So in the 19th century, South Dakota, they helped it to look for water for the farmers and for homesteaders. And in the Vietnam War, they were using dowsing rods to look for tunnels and for weapons. Okay, so the 4 types of rods can be a Y rod that's that can be used, an L rod, which will be an L-shaped, and then is what you would do is you would hold it, and the long part of the rod would go out, and you would try to follow it as it goes out. You hold the short end, and then how the long rod would go out, it would go towards one end or the other. There's a bobber, which is a coil spring that would be near the handle where you hold it. And that one, the bobber will move when you start getting close to something. I don't totally understand that. I'm just telling you what it says in the book. Okay. Haven't seen it, don't know, just giving you what I'm reading. And then what we're talking about mostly is the pendulum, which is something weighted on the end of a string. Now, you can technically use almost anything weighted on the end of a string and call it a pendulum, okay? Now, uses for a pendulum, the uses, there's like 20 different uses for pendulums. Tarot, yes, no, check polarity, using charts, the presence of negative energy, selecting crystals for healing or chakras, finding lost objects and people, decisions, discovering spirit guides, validate information, identifying colors, enhancing intuition, cleansing space, decks of cards, healings, and the list can keep going on. Okay, in choosing a pendulum, you can have a round one, which is more feminine energy, an angular shaped, like a square, rectangular, that's more masculine energy. But one's not more, the other, it's just, you know, they aren't total masculine, total feminine. It's a little bit, one's a little bit more than the other. Let me phrase it that way. The material of pendulums. Wood pendulums, the energy is more neutral. They are very long lasting and they don't need to be cleansed. If you have a brass pendulum, their energy is neutral. It's a heavier pendulum. So sometimes when you're using them, it'll take a little more energy to get it to go stronger. They also do not need to be cleansed. Crystals, problem with a lot of the crystals is a lot of times they'll get broken, but they are more responsive. They are much lighter, so at times they can spin a lot easier. For beginners, they said it's recommended to use a basic triangle, a teardrop, or a conical style. But the uses again. Hi, Melanie. Hi.
Hi.
Thanks for joining. I'm just going over a little bit of background before we get to play. I'm trying to do this as fast as I can because I know everybody wants to play. So, uses for healing, they're linked to the chakras. If you use copper, it helps to amplify and conduct energy and balance. For divination, you can use a clear crystal. It'll transform and conduct and amplify the energy. It's able to connect to the higher spirit energies. If you want spiritual energies, Mukaba pendulum helps with the spirit guides, connect to a higher self. An Indian rosewood or a shisham is divine feminine. It also helps with heart chakras. Okay. Before you use a pendulum, you know, if you get a pendulum, you need to, you know, cleanse it by either smudging it. You can put it in a brown rice, a bowl of brown rice, which they recommend the round rice versus the long grain. Leave it in there for a day or two and then discard the rice. Do not eat the rice. If you have it in a pouch with you, be careful so that it does not get any negative energy with you. You can put it in the sunlight, you can put it with the moon. Be careful with some of them, getting them wet. Some people say that they put them in water, but you got to be careful because sometimes it can, the chains can get affected. So you need to be careful with that. And putting it with salt, sometimes that can cause some reactions depending upon with the chains. Most of the time, just smudging or sunlight or moonlight is a safe way to go. Before you use a pendulum, the easiest way to do it is to make sure that you are relaxed, that you are breathing, that you're in the right frame of mind, that you're not an altered state. That's what they're saying. To make sure you have had a mindful meditation, that you were, that you were in a good state to do it. Because if you're not in a good state, then it's not going to read it right. Now, I've read two different things. I've read one place where it's the pendulum does the work. That I've heard of another place where it says the pendulum only reacts with whatever, it reacts with whatever you say. Whatever's in you is how it reacts. And I've heard otherwise, it's from outside that it reacts. I don't know what I think on that. Okay. I don't have a comment on that part myself. I always thought it was reacting from elsewhere, that it wasn't my reaction, that it was from outside. But every time you use the pendulum, you need to make sure that you clear the energy out of it before you use it again. So every time you use it, just make sure it's cleared out, just smudge it and get ready to use it. When you choose a pendulum, the easiest thing to do is just to pick it up and then ask it what its yes is and see which direction it goes. No. Are you willing to work with me today? It just sits there. You'll love it. When I was at the store trying to pick out one to buy, it did the same thing. Do you want to work with me today? And it goes, no. So it was like, okay, I guess you're not coming home with me. So this is one that I bought. This was a red jasper. This called to me. This is the one that I've been using mostly when I was doing my shamanism class. And when I do my shamanic work and working with people, that this is the one that I use most of the time with that.
So Anne, do you have multiple pendulums that you work with depending upon what you want to do or how you feel for that particular session?
I do now. As of a month or so ago, I didn't. Now I do. Because I did take a class right after Gabriel asked me to do this. There was a class that came up at a neighborhood shop. And when I went there, it was fun because I talked to some of the people there. And the one I had the red jasper when I've had that one for a while. And when I talked to one of the people at the table, one of the pendulums that I got is the gold, like a gold plated brass one. And when I was talking to the people, the gentleman at the table, he said, the brass ones are good when you're working with healing on people. And I go, oh, really? And so I thought that was very interesting because he was getting one because it works good with healing. And so I asked it, do you want to come with me for healing? And he said, yes. So I got this one mostly to work when
I think that one is actually, there's different types of pendulums. And I think that one is the Isis 9 pendulum. Like there's different categories. And I don't know the origins behind the naming convention, but it looks very similar to a certain type of pendulum that is, yeah, that's really cool.
See, I didn't even know that. Because I just picked it out for the fun of it. And then the one that I picked out, which you guys are gonna laugh because I haven't showed y'all this one yet. This is the one that came home with me, was the Marcava, which is an agate that I got. Okay, Gabriel did see it. I did cheat and show it to Gabriel. This is the guy that came home with me that day. And there was a different one that I was looking at and I couldn't decide between the two. And this is the one that chose to came home versus the other one. The other one told me, no, it did not want to come home with me. So my history, I want to give a quick history of my history with pendulums. When my daughter was 3 years old, she had real bad ear infections and she had been on antibiotics for some astronomical amount of time. I think it had been like 6 months or more. So long that she started losing her hair. Back of her hair, she was going bald on the back of her head. And I had her at the daycares the one day, and the girl, she's looking, in my daycare, she was a friend of mine, and she goes, Chelsea sat at the table and stared at the microwave like it was a television today. I go, what? And she goes, she stared at the microwave like it was a TV. She acted like she didn't know what the difference was. And it was like, oh boy, what's going wrong with my daughter? And then she was getting really lethargic and she was just getting really weird. And so my girlfriend, I talked to her and she goes, look, she goes, she's been on the antibiotics for so long. She's losing her hair. This is getting out of hand. And we got to do something about this. We got to take care of this girl. And she had been into pendulums and she had been into magnets to the extent of when she would bring her groceries home, she would do a pendulum check. She'd put them all on the magnets and she'd make sure all of her food was cleared before she put anything away. Everything, there was this big procedure that every time she brought anything in her house, she did a test, made sure it was clear, put it away. And she goes, we need to get Chelsea checked. There's a doctor, there's a friend of mine. Let's take her to this friend and see what my friend says. So we took her to the girl and then she said, you need to take her down to this guy outside of Toledo, which is about a 3.5 hour drive for me, who is a natural homeopathic doctor. And he put her on homeopathics and said that her body had just been so messed up with all being on these antibiotics for so long. It was just kind of like numbing her, killing her. I don't know. I'm not necessarily killing her, just numbing everything. So we got all that straightened out. But when we came back, we went back to Lisa and she took all the homeopathics and she would, with the pendulum, she would decide with each homeopathic that this is how much of each of these medicines she needs every day. And she would put them out and she would test and she would tell me how many drops every day she needed for them. And so I have gotten someplace, and I don't know where it is right now. I also have like a steel, I think it's like a steel pendulum. I can't find it right now. And I got that a long time ago because I was using that on Chelsea or on her medicines a long time ago. So that's where all my start came. Now this girl, Lisa, she used to be pretty famous in this area because, and Tiffany, I keep thinking of you when I think about it, because with you and your grandkids, because she had a thing where she made me take a coffee filter and get drops of blood on the coffee filter of my kids, seal it in like those wax paper envelopes or in a piece of wax paper. And on the wax paper, write their name, and their birth date and put it in a safe place. So that if anything ever happened to the kids, if they
I have
got
that with my
kidnapped,
kids.
you
Mhm.
do? Great.
Mhm.
If anything ever happened to the kids,
I have the
that-
DNA. Yeah.
well, not just the DNA, but you can take it to someone who can have a pendulum and they can help find them.
Yeah. I have that. I was told to do that. Oh gosh, I forget. From a homeopathic doctor years ago.
Yeah, I had that with mine. So if anything ever happened, that she could help find them, because she used to help the police find missing children. Or missing persons, if there was anybody ever missing, that if they had a blood sample, then she could help
Mhm.
track wherever they were missing. And I know she was pretty good at stuff like that. And so these can be, pendulums can come in very handy depending upon how much you want to use them. I've been using mine a lot more, especially this Merkaba one. This guy has just been amazing to me. It's been doing a lot more answering of a lot of questions for me lately since I've gotten it. Because I've been doing flower essences and I need to make up another mixture. So yesterday I was going through all my essences and going, do I take you? Do I not? Do I take you? And some I, got eliminated, and some, and then how many drops for each one. And so it was telling me how many for each drop. So it's been working out pretty good. So you can use them over crystals to determine if they're, these are good crystals for me to be using. If you need them for chakras, to put them on you to help you with chakras. We use them in our shamanic work when we're helping to clear people. We'll check the chakras and see if it's opened or closed, and then we can help clear, empty, get out the gunk, and then check to make sure that they're cleared. So
I'm really curious how you get numbers out of them, because I have always used it to ask yes and no questions. I never.
Yeah,
asked-
me too.
well, like when I was doing it for my for the herbal essences, I held it over the herbal essences. I go, okay, if I want to take wild oat, and I would hold over it, how many drops should I put in for my mixture? And I would just count, and it was going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it would change and go, that's the one.
Hmm.
And it actually told me which one to change to. And also on these charts that I sent to you, I sent them through WhatsApp, and I don't know if you guys can print them or not.
I sent them to everyone through the email, and Fabi, I sent it to you through WhatsApp and email. Okay, hopefully everybody has.
On
So-
some of them that I gave to you, there's numbers on them. I know on like this one here, this one has numbers, and you can try to do it with the numbers. Some of these are so small, it's really hard for me to see which one it's pointing to, whether it's going to 1 or whether it's going to 2. If you have access to like a copy machine and you can make it bigger so it's easier for you to read, or if you just want to take a piece of paper and make something bigger so that you can read things easier, it might help. So if you just want to do something where it's 1 and 2 and 3, and so you can just exactly see what direction it's going in for you, then that'll help too.
I'll be providing a website, and I'll just say right now in advance, you are welcome, because it is a free website called subtle.net, and they have pre-made pendulum boards for you to use, or you can make them, edit them on your own. So you can get something like this pre-made, and you can edit it, put whatever colors you want. You can even make it a huge board if you want to overcomplicate, if you want to make it universal. So I'll give you the link so you can have access to pre-mades and make your own. But if you have something, like Anne said, if you in the moment need to make something, if you've got a protractor, you know, those tools that you had in like math class, just make a circle or a semicircle and divide it up however you want, and, you know, make it easier. Because yes, a lot of these ones that are like the sumo pendulum boards, it's really hard for you to kind of say, okay, where are you pointing to, that little pie or this little pie? And so it makes it hard. So I'll give you guys the link to the website and some basic ones that I've already put together that you can have, as well as something like this. Oh, you can't see it. Sorry, guys. This to use as a body graph for yourself.
That's
So
good.
I'll send it to you guys.
So
That'll be-
this may sound like a dumb question, but let's say if we're using that kind of pie graph and we ask a question, well, is it like going to be like going to, like it will swing to that one answer? Because I only look for the circle or the, you know,
Yeah,
clockwise or
I think first it really depends on your pendulum and whether it wants to do that. I think I've got like 4 different pendulums. One's a rose quartz, one's brass, one's petrified wood, and they each are willing to do different things. And so I'll say, I intend right now to do, get some answers about this. Will you help me, or will you work with me? Yes, no. I'm going to point to something, or I've lost something and I want to know where it is. Will you be able to point in the direction? And it'll say yes or no. And then once you try it, it's actually really cool. You'll notice that, you know, you'll say, point to the number on this chart of how many drops of the Bach flower essence that I need to use. And you'll see it'll go in a certain direction, probably directions that you've never seen it go before. And if I've noticed, if you've got a whole circle pie graph, I can distinguish if it's pointing like back here or in front. So the movements are pretty cool to see. That's different than the yes, no, maybe responses.
And one of the things that we did when we were in this class that I was at, one of the questions they wanted us to ask is something simple, like have it spell out something, and have it spell out like something, you know, like the name of your first dog. And we use this one, which was kind of fun. You know, it's interesting how when you do it, it'll start going. You kind of like get taken away going, oh my God, it's actually going to the name of my first dog. You know, and it's like she says, it's kind of amazing to watch it start spelling it out. And then they said, when I was at the table with these people, they said, yeah, we name our pendulums. And it was
Oh.
funny. I know, I never heard of that one either. And the name of mine came up to be so funny. I gotta find it. Give me a second, because it just this guy, Nasop. And so when I asked the guy across from me, I go, because he was really good on this. And I said, can you check and make sure that I'm doing this? Because I'm getting Nasop. And he's going, yeah. He goes, I get Nasop Fozzie. And I'm going, seriously? So we had a good time with this. So you play with it and see if it's got a name, you know. And like when she was asking about directions, ask it. They had charts that you can buy, and I'm sure you can look on Amazon because they'll have them too, or any of the stores that you go to. You can buy like these felt cards, and it was real interesting because they had them at the store. And like when I do yes, my yes goes like this, and my no goes across, or my yes goes clockwise and counterclockwise is my no. But on this card that they had, the yes went horizontal and the no went up vertical, and maybe was diagonal, and then something else was this other way. And it's funny because when you put your pendulum over the card, it will go with whatever the card says. And that was really interesting because it really worked. And that's what they said. It says it will follow what's underneath it. That's why it says you put your hand first and say, show me yes, show me no. Are you willing to work with me? Or do you want to work with me? Are you willing to do this? Or however, whatever phrase you want to use with it. And then go do what you want to do with it. But it'll work with, depending upon what you're showing underneath it. And if you notice on those pages that I sent to you, they have a small thing on the bottom. It's a test. I don't know if you can read it, but it has yes, no, and I think maybe. They'll have a different little thing going, or wishful thinking. Some of them say wishful thinking, some of them say, so it'll tell you which direction you know where you're going with it. So
I think it's also too, pendulums, like I said, you could have many and they could be made of different materials and they could respond in different ways. I've noticed for mine, my yeses, the movements are always the same. But I do think that you can, if you want to, for whatever reason, program specific movements, even though like, because my movements are the same as yours, and yes, no is front back, and then no is counterclockwise. But I think, and I haven't tried doing this, but I've read that you can program specific movements to mean certain things if we're using like a particular pendulum for dowsing, or if you're using a separate pendulum for healing or releasing or invoking. Yeah, that's really interesting. So it makes me wonder though, because you had brought this up in the beginning, is like who or what is answering the questions, right? And I think there's lots of different theories out there, but it's a reaction to ultimately like biomagnetic energy. So wherever that's being sourced from, whether it's your highest self or your soul or your guides, it might be helpful. I haven't asked this question, but now I want to. Like who is responding or providing this guidance? Because I know of a practice called Huna, which is a Hawaiian, using pendulum and ancient Hawaiian traditions. And I haven't gotten nosedived into this yet, but when skimming through the book, it talks about your lower selves too. So there's aspects of yourself, just like there's you now in the present and your higher selves, there's also lower aspects of you. And to be cognizant of when you do any divination, and in particular pendulums, it might be good to get clarity on if it is you that's answering those questions, what aspect of you, because lower aspects of yourself may have different intentions than what you're looking to get answers for, if that makes sense. I don't know.
yeah, that, like I said, that really surprised me when I saw that. It was kind of like, okay, I haven't thought of it that way, you know. And then because it made me curious, it's like, well, I don't want to be influencing the answers, you know. So
I
and
had
once it,
I had a friend just yesterday ask me to confirm something that her pendulum was telling her. It was about where to house her horses, and we both got the same answer. So it could just be energy speaking. Like the question was, would the horses be happier where they are or at this new stable? And we both got that they needed to be moved. So what if it's collective energy and it's just going to like finding the path of least resistance? Because all the questions that we ask, we can do both, but what is the one that's going to be more aligned with your path?
And also, if intuition is, you were trying to connect with the intuition. If intuition is divine, it doesn't matter. It's the same. We're going through a higher self. So it doesn't matter if it's coming from within us or from outside of us, because in the end of the day, we are part of the outside, and the outside is a part of us. So I think it's just a matter of having it cleanse so we can trust that answer. And as Anne said right at the beginning, if you are not well, don't do it. You have to be as neutral as possible, I think, when you are trying to engage with the pendulum. So our energy, whatever it is, it doesn't interfere with our higher self or our divine intuition. Or I think we're not going to have the right answer if you think, oh, is it outside, is it inside? I think the important thing is the quality of the answer, I believe.
Oh, so one of the things that I try and do, because I have a lot of self-doubt, and I've got, there's a lot of distortion and interference that accumulates through the day, and sometimes I don't actively cleanse or release or keep myself protected, is I do, before dowsing, is do a pre-dowsing session to get an assessment of where I'm at that point in time. And so I ask, and I'll try and actually share my screen if I can. Let's see. Hold on one second. So I have, there's this one resource where I got all of this from that was like the aha moment for me. And it's a workbook that can be found on Kindle. And if you participate in Kindle Unlimited, it's free. But this woman named Melissa Tessaro, she is amazing when it comes to resources for pendulum healing and dowsing. And she has what's called the Pendulum Healing and Dowsing Workbook for Self-Empowerment, Self-Healing, and Inner Wisdom. And I'll send you guys the link, and hopefully if you already have Kindle Unlimited, you can just use it. But I put on this OneDrive. I can't, here it is. So, can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
What do you see? Is it a?
We see your OneDrive. We see your
Okay,
OneDrive.
perfect. Okay, so I'm going to give you all access to this, but before starting any session, I asked these questions using a 0 to 100 chart. So you know that chart that I mentioned, the pie chart, it's divided into 0% all the way to 100%. And so I ask, well, first, sit, meditate, clear, get calm, and do whatever steps that I know are like preliminary steps before doing any divination practice, but then asking, how grounded am I? Am I hydrated? How's my polarity? Because then that can affect the movements of the pendulum. What percentage am I free of non-beneficial energies? Understanding your accuracy rate, whether you're free of all fears. And one thing that, Anne, that you mentioned when you talked about the pendulum, and if it's listening, how it's listening to you, because if you sit there and you think the question in your head, will respond. And sometimes what's happening in your head and what you intend to speak kind of conflict. So I program my pendulum to only listen to the sound of my voice as opposed to all my racing thoughts. And then I assess what's the percentage that's actually listening to only the sound of my voice. Getting an assessment of how protected I am, how protected my space is, and how aligned I am with my higher self, and being balanced. So being grounded is really important. So there are certain things, if I find, like, let's say if I'm at 50, 60% or less, I'll want to stop and ground, do a meditation, bring in some grounding crystals. If I'm not hydrated enough, drink water. But for polarity, a quick fix that she says, like, so if your polarity is not correct, tap the sides of your hands like this. Tap, 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 tap. And you'll notice if you sit and you ask that question again, you'll notice an increase in your polarity being correct. And then there's certain commands that you can make, which are in this little sheet on how to go about if you need help in these areas before you start, what you can do to increase or improve in your assessment. And this also goes into the distinction between dowsing versus healing. So with dowsing, you're asking specific questions or asking it to do something, to point to something, to say yes or no. But in healing sessions, it can also be used to identify and invoke where things need to be released if you've got blocks or excesses, versus things that are clear, healthy, or that you're activating. And so these commands and prompts to use, I'll zoom in, kind of talks through like what you can do in terms of commands. So if you're not grounded enough, then you can sit and invoke the command. I call in all of my spirit and energy to come back into my physical body. I'm centered, I'm grounded, and I'm anchored into the earth. And while you're doing that, you're holding your pendulum. And typically, if something is clear, it'll move clockwise. If something is being released or disconnected, energy cords release, it's counterclockwise. But again, you need to assess those movements as part of your knowing that particular pendulum that you're working with. So one of the things that's super duper important, according to this guidance, and I agree, is that you need to make sure that you and your space are protected to the point where when you're using the 0 to 100 chart, it should be pointing to 100%. Similarly, if you should be clearing your astral and auric layers. So you need to ask it, how clear am I from non-beneficial energies or something like that? It should always be 0. So not to invoke fear or say that, you can rise above whatever distractions or interferences are there. But especially if you're new to this, it's always good to start with a clean slate so that you're creating a safe, sacred space for you to do your dowsing or healing work. So I'll send all of this is included that I'll send to you in the OneDrive. And this is the 0 to 100 chart that I mentioned. And you can make this super easy. You can draw it out, but it's also on the subtle.net website that I told you about.
And Mina, if you're not at 100%, let's say, I know in the one case you said you would ground if you aren't 100% grounded, but let's say your higher self isn't a 100% in your body. What do you do then?
I think for me, I have leeway in other areas, but there is no leeway when it comes to making sure that you're protected, your space is protected, that you are protected, and that you are clear of non-beneficial energies. I personally like to get to at least 70 to 80% if I'm not initially there as part of the pre-assessment. So, if it says that I'm like at 50% grounded, then I'll want to sit and get myself to a place where I'm at least at 80% B level. Same thing with everything else. I've noticed though, if before you just sit down fresh, before sitting down and breathing, taking time, setting your intentions, the things, the preliminary stuff that we often do before we start any practice, I find that I'm usually always at 70 or 80% going in. If I want, for whatever reason, to connect more, then there are things that you can do and say and invoke so that you can try and get to 100%. And also clearing pendulum is really important, like Anne mentioned. The one thing about pendulums that are made from metal, such as brass or copper, is that they don't retain energy. But again, at the same time, they don't work at a certain frequency that crystal or stone pendulums do. And so you can ask if you have a stone pendulum and you've done some work to clear it, but you may not do it every day. You can ask, do I need to clear my pendulum? And look at see if it says yes or no, and then go about doing certain clearing and intention settings to clear it.
I think this is really cool. I think that's really nice.
It's really cool because, you know, for me being new to everything a year ago, I was thinking that pendulums, you know, I only knew about them because my mother-in-law uses them, and I've seen her use it as asking questions, yes, no. She's used L rods to locate things as well. But then it was interesting because my grandmother passed away in January this year, and before she passed away, she would keep wads of cash with her. And yeah, I think we knew of, like, earlier that week, she had like over $1,000 just like in her somewhere with her. And from that time until the time that she passed away, we didn't know where that wad of cash went. And so I had a pendulum with me, and I was asking certain questions, but then my dad was looking at me. He's like, "Can I see that pendulum?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." I've never seen him work with pendulums before. And actually I was quite surprised because growing up, he was very adamant about not opening that door because he had been through certain experiences. So I was surprised to see him, you know, want to use it. So he took the pendulum and he started talking. He was speaking in Farsi, so I don't know exactly what he was saying, but I could tell he was talking to her, my grandmother, asking, you know, basically, where did you leave the money? And so all of a sudden it started just moving and it started pointing in different directions. And my dad just kind of walked in the directions at the time to where, you know, the pendulum was pointing, and it took him all the way across the house into my aunt's room, to a desk bureau, to a drawer. He opened it up. There was a bunch of stuff in there, pointed to a black pouch. He picked it up, opened it up, and there's all the cash. And so it was very emotional for him. More so getting that confirmation that he had a connection even after she passed away. And just also kind of, I think too, or not a remembrance because he'd never forgot, but just being in that space of being open to spirit and to guidance outside of this physical realm, and remembering the power that's in that as opposed to fear. So it was very emotional to watch and liberating, but it's from that point on, I realized there's so much more that we can do to use this as one of the many tools that are available for us in this 3D world. So it's pretty awesome.
Cool. Wow.
But I think overall, we're encouraged to remember, you know, we're in 4D, we're ascending. We should be using pendulums. Yes, it's helpful. We should use it to our highest good, so that we're taking advantage of the right choices for ourselves. If there's ever indecisiveness, finding things, you know, healing things, but remember that it's a tool, and to use it as in a way to confirm and help build or decrease the self-doubt that you have, that you may hold on your intuition. So I would recommend always, before, when you douse, try just asking the question and see if you get a knowing, or if you feel something, or or if you feel an emotion, or if you feel something in your solar plexus area, your heart, and take notice of what that feeling is, right? And give yourself a guess of whether it's yes or no, and then use the pendulum and see what it says. It's a good way to practice and flex the muscles, but also confirm for you what is your method of speaking to yourself and checking in. Because we don't want to rely on these things. We want to use them as a way to strengthen our gifts that are already within us.
One of the simple things that you can do to start is, and this is what I remember they taught us at first, is get simple foods. Get an apple, and should I eat this apple? And it'll tell you yes or no. Should I put salt on my food? Yes or no. Should I have a glass of water? Yes or no. Should I have a glass of pop? Should I have a glass of wine? Just anything. I even did it with, it's funny, with my hape that I have, because I did my crepe, and it said, I said, should I do hape over the crepe? And it said yes. And then I did my 2 different samples that I have. And one of them it said, yes, I should use. And the other one it said, no, you shouldn't be using it. Because Gabriel had mentioned something to me. Maybe you don't have the right type of hape. Maybe you didn't buy the right ones. And so I thought, well, shoot, let me try and see. Maybe I don't have it, because I kept thinking, maybe this isn't right for me. And it was like, no, it's okay. I just don't have the right stuff yet.
But also know it changes every day. It could be that your energy that day isn't aligned to that particular blend, but it will be different, because I check every day and it's different every day.
Okay, I didn't think about that too, but yeah. So
But also I want to say, Mina, like in the beginning, when I really started working with the pendulum on the things that I was unsure about, I would get a lot of no's, because my mind would want, it usually was around classes, and I would be like excited to do whatever it was, and it would be like, no, it's not for you. But yesterday I was like thinking, is this cat that we have found our cat? Does it want to be with us? Because he's still hiding, and and I knew it is, obviously, but then I came to my pendulum and I asked, and of course it was yes. So it just kind of made me reconfirm that it's worth the effort that we're putting in to play with him and try, or him or her, I still don't know, trying to get it to open up. But it's going to take time, but I definitely now know it is ours. So yeah, but it's like the getting the confirmation from your intuition. I'm excited to use these graphs, because honestly, I've never ever studied it, and I'm just wondering, like, how is this going to move to do these things?
You'll see.
Mina, who was the author again? Because I tried to look it up, but I'm not getting it.
I think somebody put it in the chat. Looks like there's a little
Yeah. And
Yeah,
yes,
the chat already, okay?
Melissa Tessaro.
Yeah.
And I have it's in the OneDrive as well, on recommendations. I put a link to her YouTube, because she actually walks you through doing certain things, which I haven't watched yet. I'm really excited to do it, but also a link to her Kindle edition workbook, as well as the website I was telling you guys about.
And just to confirm the energy, Fabi sent me this picture of Anne's pendulum, right? And it's of the book cover that then you mentioned later after she sent it to me. Because that pendulum is the cover of the book.
It's the exact same one, the Isis 9.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, this book that I was talking about in here, this thing is kind of amazing, because it goes over tarot, it goes over the chakras, it goes over homeopathic tables, it goes into details. I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's 8 pages on homeopathic tables. There's flower remedies, Bach flowers.
Oh.
3, 4 of those, 4 pages on that, aromatherapy oils. 4 pages on that, aura essences. There's a
Wow.
couple pages on that.
I couldn't, very hard to find that one. Is yours new, Anne, or is secondhand, or is old?
Honey, this is so old. It came out in
Yeah.
98, and I bet that's when I bought the, well, Chelsea was sick and yeah, that's about when Chelsea was
So
sick
you're
in
lucky. There's a
98.
few copies in the States. I looked already, but it's super hard to get them over to send over. So you girls should look for even the second hand. I think there's only, I found 2 on Amazon only.
Yeah,
.com.
yeah, it came out in 98. It's a real
Yeah.
old book. There's even runes, there's weather forecasting,
Oh, wow.
gemstones, energy intensity. There's all kinds of stuff. That's why I sent you, when I took pictures and sent them to you guys, I sent a variety so that you could have different, just to see, because I don't know what y'all wanted to play with. I sent you a chakra one. I sent you one about a tarot, meditation. There's even a past life one.
That's cool.
So
Yeah.
there's all kinds of different stuff. And if there's one you want me to send, as long, you know, I just want to make sure he gets the credit. Yep, it's from him, but you know.
Wow.
Hey, Gabrielle, didn't you say, like, in your podcast episode when you went to Mount Shasta, that guy had the L rods and he was able to measure your aura and how wide it was?
This was on, well, Fabi was sending me pictures while Anne was talking, and it wasn't this, let me think, it was more like, I think you maybe talked about this, Anne. It was like you held this copper handle and it had like a spring on it, and then it had out one dowser, and it would like move. So he's like, he had me stand in one place, and then he stood in one place holding the dowser, and then I walked back away from him, and it would start to move when my aura was out of range. So he tested it, where is your aura, to start before we went on the tour. And then at the end, mine started like at 10 feet out. And then at the end, it was like 30 feet away I was when it started. So it had grown through the experience of being with him and, you know, learning about the mountain and stuff. But yeah, it's really interesting. And even, Mina, when you were saying how your dad was able to find the money, like I have never taken one and like said like, lead me, you know, but that's such an interesting thing to try. I mean, it's like there are so many ways to use them. That's the crazy thing, right?
Mhm. I think, you know, also the universal rule of thumb, though, is if it involves somebody else, then you must ensure to have their consent,
Yeah.
whether you're dowsing or healing for them, and both verbal or and what Melissa Tessaro says, and I agree, is the consent of their higher self. So I asked the pendulum, you know, do I also have the consent of so-and-so's higher self to perform this healing? Usually it's yes, but sometimes
Do you do
no.
healings on people that are not in front of you with the pendulum? Oh,
Yeah.
interesting. I've never done that.
I did when I was practicing early on tarot, my sister-in-law and I would do readings for each other. And when I first got into this workbook, I said, let me just try something, you know. And so one night when I was feeling good about it, I did a healing session on her. I did an assessment on her and a healing session. And then the next day, or maybe a few days later, she's like, I felt this buzzing around me on this night. Was that you? I was like, actually, yeah, that was me. You're welcome. So she felt it.
Dang. Yeah.
Oh, another thing though, is when you're asking questions, make sure to say, ask about it, you know, how grounded am I right now, with an emphasis on now. because Pendulum knows also it extends beyond timelines. So when you're doing pendulum healings or dowsing, it may not take understand what you're alluding to in terms of time frame, and just answer the question however it needs to. Same thing with healing. It can cross timelines. It can go in the future. It can go into the past. It can go into parallel lives as well as the present. So be very clear, like that you're asking or commanding for right now. Or if you're doing healing, just simply state across all timelines, across all lives, across, and it'll do it.
Wow. Yeah, we use it in healing, but it's not to do the healing. It's just to read the chakra. It's not using the pendulum to create energy or change energy. It's just to dip into the chakra to see and we say, is this chakra affected? And that kind of is the first, I guess, like hit on knowing where to focus. But then that's all we use it for. And then we check to see if the chakra is cleared out. But we weren't taught to use it to actually clear energy. Interesting. I want to ask you guys, first of all, how many pendulums do you have, and which one, like, do you feel more drawn to one or another, or like, what have you formed a relationship with each or a pendulum? Anyone? Tiffany, it has you on the screen, so I'm going to go with you.
I have always used a diamond necklace that my husband bought me for our 10th wedding anniversary. And it has always worked perfectly, phenomenally. I just bought my first one that was not my diamond. So I haven't used it yet. We'll see. But my diamond has always worked. I never used a diamond that wasn't mine. It was purchased for me, so it's just always worked with me.
Well, the reason I asked is that I feel that I have 3, and each one carries a different energy. And
I can feel this one is different than my diamond.
And my question is that, so I don't know how to say this. Like, one of them feels like it's me, and the other ones feel like, okay, I have this kind of brass gold one that is new for me. And I almost feel like this one is a little bit more intense than me, but I'm interested to hear about it or learn with it. And this one that I got in Mount Shasta is a rutile quartz one. And this one feels like me. It's the most comfortable. And then the one that I got first, but I don't use, is this one that's astrophyllite. And I had, just in synchronicities, I had added the Merkaba to the other side because I couldn't hold it well. But yeah, this one has never felt like it's my energy, so I don't use it. So that's what I meant, like when we talk about different energies coming through it, tuning into that level of why, like, I don't really know why this one is always the one that calls to me.
My diamond has been the one that has always told me what the sex of each of my children were, and my sister's children, and anybody that I've asked over the years, and it's worked with me for years and years and years.
So that one's probably the closest to your energy.
Mm-hmm. Now, Ashton, I have a question for you guys. Do any of you use a strand of your hair?
Oh no.
Because Ashton uses a strand of her own hair.
And it will move?
Uh-huh.
Interesting. Did she tie something to it?
Yeah,
I have no idea. We were talking last night on the phone for a really long time.
because it will be too light if doesn't
Yeah.
have any way to be weird, because it will move in any direction.
No, she put something on the bottom of her hair.
Okay.
Like she has something that it's tied to. But she said it's the most accurate.
I mean, it would seem that it would be though, right? Because it's part of
Mhm.
you. That's
She said
interesting.
that yeah.
Now I want to try that. Wow.
Can I just say something? I just raised
Yeah.
my hand, but I don't think you can see. I was given one for my birthday from my mother, and it's a brass one, but it has 3 colors. I don't know if there's copper in it as well. It's this
Oh,
one. Can you
yeah.
see?
Yeah.
She was in a crystal shop. We have a huge crystal shop. You guys would go crazy here. And it's just like, I went nuts. I called you, you didn't answer your phone. So the crystal one, she was worried that it would, because I have a 4-year-old and he's very curious. So she thought it would break too easily because he could get it one day and then the tip could break and then you can use it again. So she saw that one and gave it to me. So it was given. I mean, I think we have a very deep connection as mother and child, but it was a present. It was not me choosing a pendulum, like Anne was saying, would you work with me and all of that. It's a very fresh, my birthday was in July, so I just made one question so far with him. I'm very tapping. It's like a new cat, like Gabby's new cat. I have one question is if it's given to you, because you said one day you can buy your own, but I just want you to get started. So I want to get you something for your birthday. If it's given to you, what do you guys think about it? And another thing, where do you store it? I was very concerned about the little house for the pendulum. So it stays as pure, as clean as possible once we finish the work with it. She gave me this as well. It's a curiosity. I don't know if you know this, a copper plaque. Do you guys know anything like that? We have that in Brazil, and then we also have the drawing of that flower of the book that you just mentioned last time, the multiple flowers.
Mhm.
The flower of
I
life.
forgot. Yeah, flower of life. I don't know if you had another name for it. And the copper seems to neutralize or cleanse the anything you put on top. So if I put a crystal or a selenite or something on top, or even my glass of water, that would be a place. But I didn't want the thing to be open air, like to be. So I want to know how me and you girls have many ones, like seems to be having more than one. How would you store it? What are your tips on that?
And do you want to go first?
I'll let you go first, Mina.
Well, I for where I store them, I keep them with my other crystals, ones that are that I keep in a pouch. But if there's one that I feel called to like be work with on that week, then I'll put it under my pillow when I go to sleep. I do that sometimes with my tarot cards, or I'll just keep it on my left side. I'll either like stick it in my bra or put it in my pocket on my left side. In terms of like receiving them as gifts, I've received one that my husband picked out for me. And I personally feel that if it's a gift given to you by someone that you are energetically connected to, um, that it is they, you know, my husband's very intuitive too, so he felt drawn to it. So I trust that there's a reason why. And that one is the one made out of petrified wood, is actually the most versatile pendulum that I have, because others have rose quartz. That one seems like, you know, the nice friend who doesn't want to hurt your feelings type of vibe. And just kind of say yes and no about the past and the present. And then I have a brass one that's very kind of harsh, you know, like it'll tell me what I need to know, not really caring about my feelings afterwards, which can be a good thing. But the petrified wood one does dowsing, but also healing, and it's very effective. So he did good for that one. It's also how you feel when you received it, how you feel, regardless of how it got to you. I would advise.
I was going to kind of say the same thing. Just like Tiffany's necklace. I mean, it was a gift to her, so it's something that's very special to you. I think it would be fine, as long as it's special to you. Um, And as far as storing it, I have a wooden bowl that I've been putting mine in my wooden bowl for now. I've got the 3 of mine together. But if I get nervous about it, then I'll put them in probably one of my, like a velvet pouch or something. If I need to take them somewhere special with me, I'll put them in one of my velvet pouches to keep it with me. But other than that, yeah, I think the one that your mom gave you would be just fine to use. I think that'd be very nice to use. I think it'd be really sweet.
I want to say I store mine right here on my desk, wrapped around this shungite Buddha that I got. And shungite is a clearing stone. And it's funny because when Mina was saying you should ask if you're clear, so I was like, I've never asked it. That's why I asked while you were talking, and it was. But shungite is a clearer, so you could like lay it on a piece of selenite or shungite. But for me, I just wanted a place to have it close by that I can easily grab it, and it's clearly working. So.
Yeah, the rose quartz one that I have it wrapped around on my altar on my green Tara, so that when I do consult with it, I kind of feel like it's infused with green Tara's essence on providing guidance. So, yeah.
And it's so interesting what you said about your brass one, because I feel the same way about I haven't had it for very long, but it feels much more to the point.
Yeah, no,
longer.
yeah, no emotions attached to it. It's just does its job, which is a good thing. But yeah, sometimes you need a little TLC.
Yeah, that's crazy. Well, I'm excited to get started on learning about this. And I probably ordered the last book on Amazon.
You did. The cheapest one. Now there's just the expensive one.
But I looked for the one that you're recommending, and it only comes on Kindle. You can't get the paper.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I have to get it that way. But Mina, you'll be sharing your link to your Dropbox or your site that you have.
Yes. I have everybody's email addresses up to like June 11th. So I don't think I've got Kayla's address. So I was wondering, can I send it to you?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
I'll send it to you right when we're done.
And then if anyone's listening to this on the replay, I will put the link. It's a link, right? Yeah, so I'll include it so that anyone can get it. So awesome. I feel like I was using it as like kindergarten level.
Oh, me too.
Yeah. So yeah, it seems like it's there to help in so many ways. So I'm excited. Definitely.
And very cool stuff in store.
Yeah.
One other thing I forgot, it said to make sure that when you're finished using it to thank it.
Oh, that's beautiful.
That was one last thing. Closing remarks.
Oh, can I do a second closing remark?
Yeah.
Yes, every time, like when I do the show me yes, show me no, always say thank you, but it might be good also in between questions. It's okay to stop it, or to say, show me my still point so that it stops. Because sometimes when you go from one question to the next, you can be quick to misinterpret the movements. So if you want to be clear and definitive, after they answer the questions, thank it, and then either stop it yourself so that it's still, or you can say, show me the still point, and it'll stop, and then go on to the next question. Because, sometimes a movement can go from a yes like this to then it's trying to migrate like this. And you're like, oh yeah, maybe. Okay. You're not letting it do its full course movement. So just a tip.
Interesting. Okay, I have just another question, because I'm looking at this one that you sent, Anne, where it has, so we see yes is up here, no is this way, but then you have these maybes. And what would that look like? Would it be going in a a clockwise thing just in that small circle? Is that a maybe? Or I guess like, maybe I just don't understand how to read these charts.
It's just trying to go, like, if you wanted to use this as the chart, it's just saying maybe would be diagonal.
Oh, okay. It would go up on that line.
It could go a diagonal, that would be your maybe.
And it would only go to this this semicircle. It wouldn't go all the way out. If it goes further than that, then that's going to a percentage point.
Well, depending upon what your question is,
Oh, okay. Okay.
you know, and then there's your clockwise or counterclockwise. If you, and you can ask it, you know, you can tell it, I want my yes to be counterclockwise or clockwise. I want it to be, you know, vertical, horizontal. You can tell it to answer, to give you your yes the way you want it.
That's how I did with my diamond necklace.
You know, you,
Yeah,
because I know
it
when
might
we
be
do,
useful to
when we
program
do
it.
our chakras, when I do the chakras, I tell it, I said, I want my yeses to be clockwise or counterclockwise. But when I do a lot of other stuff, I just say yes, my normal, just yes and no. And now,
Yeah.
okay, one more question, Mina, when it stands perfectly still for you, what do you interpret that to mean?
Yeah, that's a good question. I was wondering that too, because mine does that occasionally.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. It depends. If it's not moving, well, I've never been in that situation where I ask a question and it doesn't move. Actually, no, I take that back. Okay, let me backtrack. So in my experience, if I ask a question, if it doesn't move, then I think, okay, I need to go through my pre-assessment because something's off, you know, I need to increase my accuracy. I've got non-beneficial energies, blah, blah, blah. And usually when I go through that, my questions are answered. What I've noticed though, is that, there's really 4 responses that you need to be aware of. Yes, no, maybe, and then cannot answer or will not answer or cannot be answered, so I pre-established those 4 movements, but it may be useful to start off by programming the movements that you want it to, because I've asked questions where it goes in a direction I have no clue what it is. It'll go like this way. I'm like, oh, I don't know what that is. So it may be helpful to start off just establishing, okay, these are the responses. And in the link that I'm going to give you, there's a little worksheet that you can fill out for each response so that you can document for that pendulum what it's telling you its movements are. And then tell it to only respond in those 4 responses.
But it doesn't matter. Either you ask for it to show you the movement, or you can program it. At the end of the day, it depends on what kind of questions or the way the graphics you're working. Yeah, it doesn't matter. You can program or wait for it to give you an answer, right?
That's what I've read, and from multiple sources. I myself have never done that. I'll just say, show me it. But I'm realizing now that it might be helpful because I get movements that don't fit within those 4 categories, and I don't know what else it could be. So I'll try it.
Sorry. Okay.
Wow, you guys, thank you so much for this and all the resources too.
Yeah, this was really great.
Yeah.
Well, Melanie had one comment that I'm sorry we didn't get to comment when she was on. She said supposedly her father had done something. Well, maybe we shouldn't comment about it on TV, on the thing. We can just read the comments. And the answer would be yes, Melanie. I would go and check.
You can use a map.
Yeah.
You can use them. I know that professional dowsers who look for water sources or even geopathic stress, they do it virtually remotely first by getting like a map or blueprint of your property and using a pendulum to locate water sources or geopathic stress. Oftentimes that is caused by underground water sources with too much yin energy. And so I've seen that done before. I myself haven't done it, but I'm going to try at some point to use a map or floor blueprint of my house. So most definitely can be done.
And are we gonna, I think it's your own work, the chart, the questionnaire. Did you make there? Are you gonna share that with us, or is it?
Yeah, so everything that I did that I'm going to share is the worksheet, the pre-dowsing questions. It's all just based off of Melissa Tessaro's workbook. I just kind of put it into my own Excel spreadsheet so that I can print it out many times and do it and kind of keep a journal. So that if any of my pre-dowsing questions show less than favorable, I can kind of figure out, okay, what happened? What did I do? What did I eat? That may have attributed towards it. It's like my own little journal, but it's all I constructed it, but it's based off of what's in Melissa's workbook. And then the charts that are in there, they're all I made them through subtle.net, that website that I put in chat. You can build your own.
Oh, this is an amazing site.
It's pretty cool. Yep.
So
It's
Mina, you're amazing. I loved it. Loved it, loved it,
it's
loved
all
it.
those rabbit holes at 2 o'clock in the morning. They pay off.
I saw people with the results of that it's the same template I just saw, because I work with florals and aromatherapy. So it's going to be super handy, so I can use my own system that I wouldn't be able to find in English in another place, a Brazilian system. So I can make my own. I'm very excited.
Thank you guys.
Like I said in advance, you're welcome. It's a gold mine.
It is a gold mine.
Yeah.
And I was sharing with Gabi, you guys should research radionic tables. It's something big in Brazil. And in the same table, I don't know if you do any kind of therapy, like I work with florals and aromatherapy. And then it's literally something you can put on a table. And then with the pendulum, you can work the chakras, the crystals, the florals, and with the person you are having a session with. It's called radio. I'm gonna write it down. I believe you would have that in English or something in your table.
Yeah, because I had a book that had a little pendulum board that looked like the copper ring that you showed us, but I didn't know what it was and why you would use it. So,
and I knew the tables, but I didn't. All got connected today because I saw the pie charts of the florals when I was studying florals, and I had the pen. Now today it was like got all together. So it's such a, now it's like my aha with you. You helped me do the aha. So many weeks of research, and now it's all the puzzles were scattered and now they all got together. It was great. And you were amazing too. Thanks so much for sharing, Tiffany, as well.
Yes, you guys too. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you guys.
Thank you so much, Mina. This was great.
Thank you, Anne, for leading the charge. And that's why I got so excited, pendulums, because it's like a new path opening up and it's expansive and possibilities seem endless. So thank you for having the inspiration to do this and for sharing your story on how you were led to using pendulums.
Yeah.
Gabrielle's the one that said, Anne, would you do it? So
No, it wasn't
back to her.
It
Yes,
wasn't me, because I think it was Melanie, or a couple people were like, well, Anne's using the pendulum. Can someone teach us about that? I was like, well, let's ask her.
Well,
thank you, Anne.
I hope they all get to play. I hope everybody has fun with it.
Yeah, it is fun. It's fun for sure. Well, thank you guys, and
thank you so much.
Uploading this to the YouTube site, but as soon as I get all the notes and the links and stuff. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
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 Bye.